If you were to walk into the headquarters of any major world religion today, whether it is a massive, stadium-seating evangelical megachurch in Texas, an ancient, wood-paneled Orthodox synagogue in Jerusalem, or a grand, marble-floored mosque in Cairo, and you were to ask the man in charge, "Excuse me, does your religion believe that men and women are truly equal?" you would get the exact same reaction. The religious leader would gasp, clutch his holy book to his chest, look deeply offended by the mere suggestion, and say, "Yes! Absolutely, men and women are 100% equal in the eyes of the Lord." But if you stuck around for about 5 minutes and actually watched how that institution operates, you would realize that religious equality looks suspiciously like a 1950s corporate office, where the men get the corner suites, the microphones, the executive salaries, and the right to make all the final decisions. And the women get a lovely bouquet of carnations on Mother's Day, and the sacred, eternal privilege of cleaning up the fellowship hall after the potluck. Today, we are going to look at the greatest theological loophole ever invented by the human male. We are going to look at the concept of being equal in value but different in roles. It is a brilliant piece of PR. It is the religious equivalent of telling someone, "We are totally equal partners in this airplane, but I get to fly it, and you get to walk down the aisle handing out the tiny, impossible-to-open bags of pretzels." We are going to examine how Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all fiercely claim to champion women, while simultaneously using ancient texts to build an indestructible, bulletproof, stained glass ceiling. I'm Holy Timelines. Today, the Divine HR Department. Let us start with Christianity, specifically the modern, highly caffeinated, fog machine-loving evangelical world. If you look at the historical life of Jesus, he was a first-century radical when it came to women. In a cultural era where prestigious rabbis literally refused to speak to women in public, Jesus had female disciples traveling with him. He let Mary of Bethany sit at his feet, which was the ancient cultural equivalent of letting her enroll in an Ivy League seminary. And when Jesus resurrected from the dead, the ultimate climax of the entire religion, he didn't appear to Peter, the supposed CEO of the disciples. He appeared to Mary Magdalene and told her to go preach the very first Easter sermon to the men, who were currently hiding in a locked room having a collective panic attack. Jesus essentially bypassed his entire male executive board and made a woman the very first Christian apostle. But if you fast forward 2,000 years and walk into a conservative megachurch, you will witness a fascinating feat of theological gymnastics known as Complementarianism. Complementarianism is a very fancy 6-syllable seminary word that roughly translates to, "I get the steering wheel and you get the emotional labor." Imagine a woman in this church. Let's call her Dr. Sarah. Sarah has a master's degree in ancient Greek exegesis. She reads biblical Hebrew for fun on the weekends. She has a doctorate in pastoral care. She is a brilliant public speaker. And she possesses a deep, profound understanding of the human soul. Now imagine a guy named Chad. Chad is 19 years old. His theological background consists entirely of watching 3 YouTube videos on apologetics while aggressively chewing gum, and he is currently wearing a backwards baseball cap and eating a family-sized bag of Cool Ranch Doritos in the sound booth. In many modern churches, because of a couple of highly debated, heavily cherry-picked memos written by the Apostle Paul to a chaotic church in Greece 2 millennia ago, Dr. Sarah is strictly forbidden from standing behind the pulpit to deliver the Sunday morning announcements. Why? Because she might accidentally exercise spiritual authority over Chad. And if a woman exercises spiritual authority over a man eating Doritos, the entire cosmic hierarchy of the universe might collapse and we will all slide into anarchy. So, Chad is handed a microphone and asked to lead the youth group, while Dr. Sarah is handed a clipboard and asked if she wouldn't mind organizing the Wednesday night casserole rotation. This double standard leaks into every aspect of church culture, especially the retreats. If you go to a men's church retreat, it is basically a lumberjack cosplay camp. The men go out to the woods, they shoot shotguns, they eat 30 pounds of smoked brisket, they yell at a campfire, and they are told that Jesus wants them to be brave, fierce warriors. If you go to a women's church retreat, they are put in a hotel conference room that smells like lavender, they are handed a scrapbook, and they are subjected to 6 hours of lectures about how their primary spiritual duty is to submit to the guy who just spent his weekend shooting pine cones with a paintball gun. The modern church loves to preach about the Proverbs chapter 31 woman. You hear this every single Mother's Day. Pastors read the poem from the book of Proverbs about the ultimate, ideal, biblical wife. But if you actually read Proverbs chapter 31, that woman is an absolute terrifying girl boss. The text says she is buying real estate. She is inspecting fields. She is running a massive, multinational textile manufacturing empire. She is trading with merchant ships. She is basically the ancient Near Eastern equivalent of a Fortune 500 CEO. But the modern church reads that text and somehow translates it into, "You should stay home, homeschool 3 kids, bake sourdough bread from scratch, sell essential oils on Facebook, and never, ever speak during a committee meeting. They took an ancient poem about a female titan of industry and shrank her down into a mascot for 1950s domestic submission. But Christians absolutely do not hold the monopoly on creative gender inequality. Let us walk over to the Orthodox Jewish synagogue. Judaism has a beautiful, rich, incredibly deep tradition of honoring the matriarchs: Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. The Jewish mother is the legendary, undisputed powerhouse of the family structure. She can induce guilt from 3 time zones away. But if you look at the daily liturgy, the actual, literal prayers that an Orthodox Jewish man is required to recite every single morning when he wakes up, there is a line that is absolutely staggering to the modern ear. Every morning the man prays, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has not made me a woman." Now, rabbinic scholars will immediately do backflips to explain this to you. They will sweat through their suits telling you, no, you don't understand. It's not an insult at all. Men are just thanking God that they have more commandments to fulfill. Women are naturally more spiritual. They are born closer to God, so they just don't need as many rules as us dumb earthly men. It's actually a huge compliment to women, which is a brilliantly manipulative pivot. It's like a husband telling his exhausted wife, "Honey, you are so naturally gifted at domestic logistics, which is why I am sitting on the couch watching the NFL while you cook Thanksgiving dinner for 30 people. I just require more rest to achieve your level of holiness." It's a compliment. This compliment is physically built into the architecture of the synagogue itself. In an Orthodox service, there is a physical barrier called the Mechitza. It divides the room. The men are on one side, singing, reading the Torah, carrying the sacred scrolls, and actively leading the service. The women are on the other side of the wall. Sometimes it's a curtain. Sometimes it's tinted glass. Sometimes it's literally a balcony so high up it feels like you need supplemental oxygen to breathe. And it leads to the wildest mathematical paradox in religion, the Minyan. In traditional Judaism, you need 10 Jewish adults to form a quorum for public prayer. But it has to be 10 men. You could have 9 male Nobel laureates sitting in a room, and then Golda Meir, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Wonder Woman walk in. The rabbi will look at those 3 legendary women, look at his watch, and say, "We are still short one guy. Anyone see Bernie from accounting?" Imagine being a modern, secularly successful Jewish woman. You are a senior partner at a massive New York law firm. On Friday afternoon, you are negotiating a $300 million corporate merger, commanding a room full of terrified junior associates, destroying your opponents with flawless logic. But on Saturday morning, you go to the synagogue, and you have to sit behind a piece of frosted glass, standing on your tiptoes, trying to peek over a wooden partition just to get a glimpse of the Torah scroll, like you are trying to peer into a VIP speakeasy that you don't have the password for. You are an equal member of the covenant, of course. You just aren't allowed to touch the contract, read the contract out loud, or sit in the same room as the men who are reading it. And if you go to a bar mitzvah, you have to try to throw hard candies at the 13-year-old boy over a 10-foot wall, which basically requires the arm of an Olympic shot putter. And then we arrive at Islam. If you read the Quran historically, strictly in the context of 7th century Arabia, it actually introduced massive, sweeping, fiercely progressive rights for women. Before Islam, female infanticide was common, and women were treated as literal property to be inherited alongside the camels. Islam came in and said, "Stop. Women get to inherit money. Women have a right to divorce. Women have a right to their own property." In 610 AD, that was radical, groundbreaking feminism. But religions have a funny habit of taking a radical, progressive step forward, freezing it in amber, and then refusing to take a single step further for 1,400 years. Today, if you visit a beautifully designed, multi-million-dollar modern mosque in the West, the architectural gender divide is often breathtakingly awkward. The men pray in the main hall. It is gorgeous. There are massive, glittering crystal chandeliers. There are hand-woven Turkish carpets that cost more than a Honda Civic. There is beautiful natural light pouring through stained glass windows. And where do the women pray? In many modern mosques, the women's section is a total architectural afterthought. It is a repurposed basement. It smells faintly of old carpet cleaner and damp concrete. There is a single, flickering fluorescent tube making a buzzing noise. And because the women cannot see the imam leading the prayer upstairs, they have to follow along by watching him on a 32-inch flat-screen TV from 2008 with a blown-out pixel in the corner. The men get the Taj Mahal, and the women get the waiting room at a discount tire shop. But remember, totally equal in value. The rationale behind this separation is that if men and women pray in the same room, the men will be distracted, which is a fascinating admission. The implicit argument is that if a woman is in the room, and perhaps her ankle or her forehead is visible, the men will instantly lose all cognitive function and completely forget how to worship the creator of the universe. Which really says less about female temptation and a whole lot more about the absolute, terrifying fragility of the male attention span. And then there is the modesty double standard. In Islam, the concept of hijab modesty technically applies to both men and women. But the modern cultural application of it is the greatest double standard in religious history. A Muslim man can walk out of his house in July wearing a tight graphic t-shirt, gym shorts that hit exactly right at the kneecap, and a pair of Nike slides, and nobody says a word. He is considered perfectly modest. He is a paragon of virtue. A Muslim woman walks out of her house, and she is expected to wear a full-length, opaque, loose-fitting garment that covers everything from her wrists to her ankles, plus a headscarf that completely conceals her hair and neck, regardless of whether it is 110 degrees outside with 80% humidity. And if she happens to post a picture on Instagram where a quarter inch of her forearm is accidentally exposed because the wind blew her sleeve back, 300 teenage boys named Tariq will immediately jump into her comment section to tell her that she is destroying the moral fabric of the ummah and is fast-tracking her way to hellfire. Tariq hasn't cleaned his room in 6 months and doesn't know how to do his own laundry, but he is currently acting as the Supreme Court Justice of modest ankles on the internet. Men are allowed to just exist in their bodies. Women are treated as walking hazard signs, completely responsible for managing the visual temptations of every single man in a 5-mile radius. Across all 3 of these massive religions, the core mechanism of discrimination is the exact same. It is the absolute brilliant weaponization of divine design. When human men want to keep the power, the money, the corner office, and the microphone, they don't say, "We want to keep the power because we like it and we don't want to share." That sounds selfish. That sounds like a dictatorship. Instead, they pass the buck to upper management. They say, "Listen, Brenda, we would love to let you preach. We would absolutely love to let you read the Torah. We would love to let you pray in the main hall with the good lighting. But God wrote a memo 3,000 years ago, and my hands are tied. It's just divine biology. Men are designed for leadership, and women are beautifully, wonderfully, equally designed for submitting to our leadership while baking muffins. Take it up with the big guy. It is the perfect crime." By blaming the discrimination on the creator of the universe, you completely insulate yourself from criticism. If a woman complains that she is being treated like a second-class citizen, the male religious leader just shakes his head sadly, gives her a patronizing smile, and says, "You aren't arguing with me, sister. You are arguing with God." But the cracks in the stained glass ceiling are getting wider. Modern women are reading the ancient texts for themselves, and they are bringing the receipts. Christian women are pointing out that Paul commended female apostles. Jewish women are pushing for inclusive prayer spaces at the Western Wall. Muslim women are reclaiming the fierce, independent spirit of Khadija, the Prophet Muhammad's first wife, who was a wildly successful, wealthy businesswoman who was significantly older than him and literally hired him to work for her. The religious institutions of the world are currently looking at a generation of highly educated, spiritually passionate, fiercely intelligent women, and they are desperately trying to hand them a mop, a nursery schedule, and a casserole dish. And the women are looking back, pointing to the original, radical, boundary-breaking history of their own faiths and saying, "No thanks. We think we'll take the microphone." I'm Holy Timelines.